Primarily, we did ground support work. Fighter, we escort dive bombers and bombing and skip bombing and we dropped napalm. You know, we were just whatever they directed us to do.
Did you enlist in the Army at 18
I
then?
enlisted in the Navy,
In the Navy, that's right.
January 1942.
Was there something that propelled you to do that in 1942?
Well, I've always been kind of interested in aviation, and the Navy lowered their requirements in what they call the B-5 program. So I was directly out of high school. I graduated in June, and they lowered the requirements of college education to get into their flight program. They needed pilots, so I enlisted and went through it with flying colors. You know, flying colors.
No pun there, of course.
No,
So where did you graduate from high school then?
from Marshall, Minnesota. Yeah, I graduated in 1941. I was never really too excited about high school. I mean, like math and stuff. I probably ended up with a C plus average when I graduated, but when I went through Pensacola, I ended up with a 3.95 average because I missed one math problem and azimuth shooting a star sight for navigation. But it was quite an experience, you know.
When were you deployed? Tell me about that process and when you received the orders that you're going to go overseas.
Well, I was commissioned September 28th as a second lieutenant, and we went training on carrier landings, and then we got shipped to a fighter pool in El Toro, California. And about a week later, I was assigned to a squadron, BMF 313, and I was about 2 weeks later, we boarded the carrier and went to Hawaii. And we trained in Hawaii for a month, and then we went to Midway Island and just I did primarily patrol work, and I was out there for 3 months, and we came back, went out to an island called Emaru. Our squadron was transported, and we did bombing, strafing, you know, patrol work there, and from there we were shipped into Philippine Islands. We were the first squadron to be based there when MacArthur landed there. So, and unofficially, as far as I know, I was the first Marine fighter pilot to set foot there, to be based, because I got off the transport first. So,
So
I mean,
a proud moment for you.
right, yeah, it's I don't know if anybody else can claim that, but it's unofficial, no cameras.
So how old were you at the time when you started dropping bombs on the enemy then?
Well, I was 21. I was born in 23 in 1944, and well, in early 45. So I'd have been 22 in November of 45.
What's the most powerful memory you have of your experience in World War II?
Most powerful experience was probably the cohesiveness of our squadron flying together. I mean, we still have reunions there we had till the last couple of years, you know, and it's we had more camaraderie, I'm sure, than we ever had in high school, you know. But I would say that the cohesiveness of all the pilots in our squadron, and it was all for one for all, you know. And as far as the ground troops, we were above that. And how many people we never did see any planes when we were flying, Japanese, but we destroyed several on the ground. Whether they were operable or not, I don't know. We'd bomb and strafe and blow up bridges and docks. And I have a war diary of every flight that everybody in our squadron made during World War II, and it's about that thick. But I don't. I don't know. You'd have to go take. I gave it to my nephew to read, and he only got halfway through it in a month. So
How many people are in a squadron then?
We had 40 pilots, and then about 200 and some enlisted people, ground with our groundskeepers, mechanics, ordnance, all this, everything else.
And is there a story that stands out the most in your mind of something that happened while you're in combat, or not so much in combat even, but while you were dropping bombs or flying overhead?
Well, the main thing would be when I dropped that 1,000-pound bomb, skip bombed into that ship. When I leveled off from my bombing run, my tracers were halfway down the deck. I had to really pull back so they'd be at deck level. But I mean, that's the most vivid memory I've got of everything in the war. I was going through my war diary here, and I said, there are things in there that I'm accused of doing I couldn't remember. Some of the flights where we go Bongo and Zamboanga, we'd go out and bomb these islands and strafe, and we drop anything 500 to 1,000-pound bombs or napalm or whatever, and some of those things are just kind of erased from my memory. I do remember our executive officer was real great on tactics, and we had developed a defensive, what we call the meat cleaver weave, where if enemy fighters come in, there was somebody protecting your tail all the time. And that was, like I said, a real sad day when he got killed, because he was probably well liked.
How about you yourself? Did you have any close brushes to being killed or right in the line of enemy fire at all?
Well, this is pretty hard to say because I know we were shot at because when we come in on our bombing runs, strafing runs, one of the pilots in our echelon came back with a hole that big in his wing on the outside of the echelon, so he got hit. Enemy fire was fairly accurate, and we knew it was all around us, but you tried your best to ignore it. It did no good to be afraid of it. You had to go in there anyway.
How was it coming back once your service was done? Like you just said there, you knew the enemy fire was around you. Was it hard to adjust when you came back?
It was kind of different. I had different aspirations before I went to the service than when I came back. But my family had moved to Calumet City, Illinois, and my brother was a baker, and he had a bakery and in partnership with another couple, and so he sold out, and we came out South Dakota and started a bakery. So, yeah. And then as far as war experiences, nobody talked about it back in those days. I felt, why should I tell you my problems? Because the guy I'm talking to probably had it worse than I did. Now I know my two Marine buddies here, they were both. JB was a sergeant, and so was Tom, and I know they had experience in Guadalcanal a lot worse than I had up in the air. And how many times I got shot at, how close they came, I have no idea. And I prefer not to think of it. One of the biggest fears I had are when I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't remember putting my wheels down before I landed. Now that's, to me, was, you get too automatic, and it could be that you forgot to put them down, So I wake up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't remember doing it, so you had to consciously remember to do all those things. And, but that airplane was probably the best airplane I ever saw to fly.
Tell me about the airplane.
Well, it was that Corsair, the inverted gull wing. It had 2,000 horsepower engine. We could cruise at from 380 to 400 miles an hour if we wanted to push it. Takeoff, we had big flaps, and we dropped 40 degrees flap. We could take off in 300-400 feet. It was built for carrier type, but they took it off carriers because it had so much power. If you come in and had to take a wave off and give it full power, it's snap roll. They couldn't hold it. So that made it. They took them off carrier. All Marines would put land-based then.
You said that you had different aspirations at the beginning when you went into war than you did when you came home. Was it the war that changed you? What happened? What were your earlier
Well,
aspirations?
I don't know if it changed me. I mean, I didn't look at it that way. I kind of, I guess, rolled with the punches. You know, took life as it came and tried to do the best I could. So, I and I think back 50 years ago, I can't really remember what my emotions were. I know my family was elated when my sisters, younger sisters, were just graduating from high school when I got out, and to them I was a big hero. Well, I said the only heroes I know were buried over there. So yeah, two of my best buddies and I took a big hunting trip after we got discharged, and we went. Our squadron, we had a fellow named Bill Gardner. His mother was part owner of the Boston Red Sox, Emma Auerbacher, and he had a big party lined up for us in New York City for the 1st of December. We were on a big hunting trip. We didn't get to Chicago, where my folks lived, until the 19th of December. Oh, we had a lot of fun. You know, we just took advantage of being free.
How old were you when you came back?
I was 22. Outside of that, really, we had primitive ways and out in the islands, you know, and we had pyramid tents and it was hot and humid. On the island of Emeru, it would rain, just a cloudburst for about half an hour, then the sun would shine. 3 hours later, another one.
Tell me, was there something that you did in the downtime to entertain yourselves? Games or just talking, entertainment,
Well,
cards?
we get together on Emeru. There was a squadron of New Zealanders, B-25 pilots, and they'd come over and we'd play bridge or something all night long, you know. And we had bought some these fizz bottles off the ship when we got off the carrier and got some. We had gallon of Coke syrup and some Del Prado rum. We have rum and Coke, and these New Zealanders start singing songs about, you know, you know, we entertained ourselves as much as we could. Uh, I really don't call much about because, well, every time the Navy had a rule that after every day's flying, they gave you an ounce of whiskey for. Well, some of the guys would save it until they get a full, and then we'd have a party. But
So tell me your thoughts on the war in general. A lot of times you hear World War II referred to as the good war. Do you see it as that way?
well, I didn't feel that killing was any good war. We did the job because we had to. I personally felt real sorry for the Japanese Americans that were put in refinement or confinement in the States. But I now, like JB, he has animosity towards the Japanese. Of course, I wasn't right down eyeball to eyeball. You know, I was up to where the people that I probably killed I never knew, which makes a lot of difference.
How did
And
you view the enemy at that time while you're in there fighting?
any feeling towards, well, the feeling was destroy or be destroyed. You know, and that's what they would give us a flight. We had to go bomb and strafe this particular area. You never, I didn't, but give it a thought to how many people I was probably obliterating or if I was getting any of them, you know, really. But when we went to Zamboanga, then we did primarily ground support work for the 41st Division that landed there. And we got a left-handed compliment in the VFW magazine a few years back where they had an article that said sweeping the southern Philippines. I had about this 41st Division that went in. And I was on an LST. We had 40 pilots and only about 20 planes, so we didn't all fly in. So I talked to the major and let me in, go into the grounds crew. And I was aboard the LST while the Navy was shelling the island. And they had a cruiser cruising up and down offshore. and between him and the shore was a fellow in a motorboat with a big flag up, and you couldn't see him once. You could see the flag, but if he saw any Japanese activity, he dropped the flag, and then that cruiser cut loose with all their guns. At one ravine, they said the Army found 300 dead Japanese, and they were trying to get back down to the beach. So we landed shortly after the Americans took the beach, or took the landing strip, and I remember we were in LSC, and they were dropping mortars all around us. That was kind of scary, because you don't know what ones. But I mean, there you are. You're sitting on this. You can't do anything. No place to hide. And we went. Another memorable moment. Our Sergeant Regan was our mess sergeant, and the major had found out I was a baker, so he made me mess officer. And we had a water cooler with a broken trailer hitch, and we had a 6x6. Got all of our carbines packed in the corner. The Army told us the strip was secured. The Japanese used the strip for a road. They didn't build roads around like we did. So here we go down the middle of that strip, the Japs on one side, the Americans on the other, shooting back and forth. And you'd have to know Sergeant Reagan, once a bomb went off, he was gone for 3 days. Well, we made it, got back to our area, and set up our tents and got our mosquito netting over. And that night, while the Army had been moving trucks and tanks up that road, we weren't 200 yards from the road. And of course, they ceased operations at dark. Next morning, the first truck hit a landmine. So the Japs infiltrated during the night. So we all slept with a loaded 45 under our pillow. So that was one of the memorable moments. Then we set up our own bakery tent. I baked, had my men mixing bread dough, and the whole squadron of the enlisted men were packed around that cook tent, waiting for that bread to come on. And about midnight, the first loaves came on. I went back to my tent, and I lifted up Hal Reed's mosquito net, and threw that loaf of bread in. About an hour later, I heard him rustling. I said, "Aren't you asleep yet, Hal?" And he said, "Hell no, I ain't finished this loaf of bread yet." Eat the whole thing.
You're a good man to have around then, right?
We had a great camaraderie between everybody in the squadron. The only thing I would like to say that if we were fighting then with the rules we got today, we'd be speaking Japanese or German. And that's the sad part about our politics today.